Kids of back in my day parents, what's the most annoying thing they ranted about? My friend's dad used to always tell us that if we were motivated we could go to the nearest grocery store, get a job as a bagger and become store manager in a matter of months. Alright, then you go do that. My stepdad was a newspaper boy at 14. I wasn't able to get a job until 16 and heard about it every day until then. People can't hire under 16 most places, and if they do then you're doing literally nothing because of the child labor laws. The most annoying thing to me is how my parents complain that nobody from my community speaks our native language anymore. They say back in my day, everyone spoke our language and today none of you kids can. Guess what? The adults never taught it. It wasn't used in the homes. So how the frick are we supposed to learn it? And then I have people from the home country call me and speak and I'm like, I barely understand. I can speak better than my siblings but not that much better. And they yell at me. Don't blame me. Blame my parents. And my parents and my friends' parents, they can all blame themselves and not their children. My stepdad always rants about me not buying a home when he bought one at 21 years old. He always forgets to mention that it only cost him $22,000. Bet that home is valued at around $100k or more now, unless it was a shithole or not there anymore. My father likes to ramble about how back in his day he went to school and also managed to work to provide sustenance to his mom and siblings. I think it's possible to study and work, but you have to be extremely lucky to earn enough to provide for a family these days while also studying. I think if you're talking about US economy, has fundamentally changed in the past 40-50 years, and yes, it is nearly impossible to work your way through the studies while also being a bread earner for your family. The most annoying thing they rant about is us not providing our kids the same life they had. My great-grandparents owned several thousand acres at the turn of the century. They passed down land, heirloom furniture, or thriving farm, etc. The next generation split it all up, sold a lot of it to start their own business. The next generation the same. The last little plot of that is my mom's acre. Each generation inherited less and less. I will inherit nothing. I got no land to start my family with. Unlike them, no heirloom furniture, no money, nothing. My family looks down on me and my cousins for struggling, pretending they worked harder than we do. But they'll never know how hard our generation works for our kids. There's a saying that goes something like this: the first generation works, the second generation maintains, the third generation blows it all away, and the fourth generation works to get it back, and then the cycle repeats with the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and so on generations until there is pretty much nothing left from the first generation. My grandparents. You can't trust anybody in this world anymore. Back in my day there were no rapes or murders. Everyone was nice and cared for each other, no one hurt each other. First of all, that's a freaking lie. There were rapes and murders and horrible people back in your day. You just never heard of them because A, they went unreported to the police, B, you didn't have TV and crap to report on them, C, you just never paid attention and pretended it didn't exist. My grandma also tries saying stuff like, oh, such and such city is dangerous. You can't ever go there, any place can be dangerous. There have been murders and huge problems just miles from my house. But the news only likes to report on the exciting problems in exciting areas. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen everywhere. OMG, my grandma is exactly the same. She literally was telling me how evil the world is today with all the rapists and child molesters, and then later that same day started telling me about how her sister was touched by their uncle for years. Absolutely baffles me. Back in their day, only complete losers had cars in high school. According to them, the cool guys were on the school bus with all the pretty girls, and they told me that crap with straight faces. So that was a freaking lie. My dad and uncle's aunt like to rant about how young people don't have any honesty or work ethic. My oldest and youngest uncle made moonshine. My middle uncle stole cars. My dad built moonshine running cars out of the parts, and my aunt ran off with a 50-year-old sugar daddy at 15. It took the car stealing uncle going to jail to straighten them out. My landlord summed it up nicely: you kids would have gotten shot for pulling half the stuff I did at your age. Having to listen to the getting to school and back stories. I know dang well that you didn't walk 10 kilometers in snow that reaches your waist, through a forest with wolves and no proper winter boots. We had one pair of shoes to share between the 7 of us. I got them on Thursdays. My mother would try and claim my siblings and I were lazy because when she was 14 she used to come home from school, walk the dogs, then dance all night. Turned out this translated to she would go out drinking and clubbing underage. Apparently there was actual crap you could buy for a quarter. Like great, there's not anymore. What significance does this have to me? Nothing? Thought so. Absolutely love when they completely discount the effects of inflation too. In 1970, a quarter was worth $1.65 in today's money. It always drove me nuts when my parents would complain about how we never spent any time outdoors, because back in their day they'd be tramping through the woods at all hours of the night. I wanted to do that, but I wasn't allowed outside. Dad, back in my day, if your dad made a joke about you and you make one back, he'd take you out back and beat you for disrespect. Me, that doesn't seem respectable. Beating people who you don't like up? Didn't you teach me to not do that? Dad, that was extremely disrespectful and in my day I would have whipped you with my belt for that. Well, they don't mean respect, they mean submissiveness. Got yelled at when I quit a job in college that paid $8 HR. I made $3 hour when I was your age. I would have killed to make that. Something inflation. Quit after I realized the money I made in a month would barely pay for one of my textbooks, and I was taking 18 credits and didn't have enough time to actually read them. Seriously, it's nothing now, but when Merry Christmas, Charlie Brown was made, Sally asking for 10s and 20s for Christmas was ridiculous. Dial phones. They complained about how kids these days, specifically my brother and I, don't know how to use them after forgetting we had one in the house until I was 7, and I know full well how to use one. My boss refuses to believe I know how to read a map, like an actual folding paper map, drive a manual transmission car, change a tire, operate a VCR. My parents always complained that back in their day the kids were always subjected to corporal punishments and were super submissive. They forgot that they already did that to me. They are just complaining that it didn't work that well, not that they're actually submissive to my grandparents. Basically I have bad parents, and they're bad people. Exact situation I have with my mom's side of the family. Traditional Chinese as frick. And they think that it helps teach when you nearly beat your kid to death multiple times in a month for not smiling or some crap. Car seats. I don't care if you drove around with a baby laying in the front seat of your car, you aren't taking my toddler anywhere without a car seat. This one drives me nuts. Yes, Dad, my baby toddler needs a car seat properly installed in the car, not just sitting on the backseat floor. No, the straps do not need to be nice and loose so she can wiggle around. No, those aren't extra buckles. My dad won't be driving her anywhere. My dad is always bitching about today's athletes, how they choose money and hold out or don't play while injured. In any other job, you would go where the money is. Why is it you have to be loyal in sports? Sure enough, when KD was sitting out in the finals, he thought you could never get me to sit during the finals. No matter what, then KD injures himself and I crap you not. He ranted about how you have to be smart about injuries or you just hurt your team. God forbid recovering from your injury and not risking your entire professional career. How I was always being a bad kid by ignoring them by browsing Facebook, while they ignore me when I ask them a question by browsing Facebook. Their excuse is, we are your parents, we can do whatever we want, you are our kids so you have to respect us. Back in my day kids didn't talk back to their parents or give them attitude. If they did they got a good beating. First of all, what you and your parents consider talking back is actually called having any sort of opinion different from yours. And yeah, maybe I do have an attitude. It should be expected. I'm young and stupid, but not so stupid that I can't have a thought of my own. And any attitude I do give you is mostly because my opinions aren't taken seriously and you don't listen to me. Like when if I'm a parent I'd at least explain to my kid why something is wrong. I realize it can get tiring, but there's a certain point where you do actual damage when you just do the because I said so to a 14-year-old over and over again. My mom was from Cambodia during the time when they were communist. Every time I ask for anything it's, back in my day. This is how most conversations go in my house. Cookie dough is just an example. Me. Mom, can I get some cookie dough for later? Mom. Back in my day we ate bugs and we starved for days fleeing from the communist, dodging bullets, running around dead bodies, and you're asking me for cookie dough? You're so unappreciative and spoiled. Me. I know would have worked. All through my teenage years my mom would get mad that I didn't know how to cook, or clean something good enough, or use something correctly, usually gardening tools. When I was your age I could run my family's B&B single-handed. Then when she was done telling me how stupid I was for not knowing, she'd take over and tell me to go away. Thanks for teaching me how to do it right. Out of date job hunting advice. No mom. Going in every day and demanding to speak to a manager is not more effective than being polite and applying online. Not necessarily my parents. They do this a little bit, but I think they also understand the millennial Gen Z point of view when I explain it to them well enough. But pretty much the general attitude of blaming social media for the perceived problems of today's youth. Back in my day, we didn't have the internet, so we actually played outside and knew how to talk to people face to face and made real friends. I mean, it's not like your generation got caught up in the paranoia of childhood disappearances to the point of forbidding us from leaving the front yard unsupervised and micromanaging our entire social lives such that we only ever met kids our age in organized institutions, school, sports, extracurriculars, etc. that usually ended up doing everything to discourage us from interacting with said kids anyway, and that you wouldn't let us hang out with other kids in our free time until you've met the kid and their parents so that you could decide when and where we had a play date. It's not like we were so socially stunted and starved by this that we grasped at online interaction because it was the one thing you couldn't figure out how to monitor, so it was the only way we could interact with others in a way that felt organic. No, clearly Instagram is single-handedly turning children into socially inept hermits. And of course the greatest generation didn't say the exact same thing about television, and their parents didn't say the same thing about radio, etc. Back in my day we didn't have virtual reality P. We didn't even have the Sears catalog. We had to actually go to the store and jack off to the mannequins. I miss the good old days. Having to walk 2 miles to her bus stop in the rain and snow, having to get a job at 15, buying her own clothes. I love my mom, but she grew up better than I did, and hearing her complain just ticks me off a little. Back in my days people weren't that soft and full of emotions because we didn't have so much free time. We were working, and if someone wasn't disciplined they sent them to the military, and that's exactly what your generation needs to get the programmed because you guys have way too much time to think about your emotions. My dad said the same crap. Honestly, I'd rather be more in tune with my emotions than repressed 24/7. Living off of salt cod and potatoes during the Great Depression. My father was already up there in years by the time I was born. But boy, the Depression days talk basically one-upped everything else we could bring up. My mother never liked her own mother's sexism and favoritism towards her kids while they were growing up. I was maybe 20 before I saw it in action. Grandmother had cooked a huge supper, and mum told her to go relax while we did the dishes. Grandma, by then around 90, got up from her chair, took the dish towel away from my brother, and told him to have a seat and she dry the dishes. So maybe mum had something to complain about there after all. Not my parent, but my grandmother, who basically raised me from age 8, likes to say by your age I was married, pregnant and working. What's wrong with you? She misses out the fact she was still living with her parents and her now ex-husband, my bio-grandad, was in prison. I think I am doing pretty well for myself. I haven't got a job, but I am not raising a kid that I don't want like most other people my age in this day and age, and I am really trying to make a life for myself. How the world was safer back then, as if they didn't have the Zodiac Killer and Ted Bundy. You don't see a lot of high profile serial killers nowadays. They just got sneakier. You kids get a trophy for everything now. You never learn how to try hard. Yes, when I was a child I got participation trophies, and they felt very patronizing. Also, I was 7. I didn't ask for the dang trophies. It was your generation who was giving them to me. I threw those participation trophies away so freaking fast BC, it was so embarrassing. I didn't want them. I didn't walk around saying look at what I won. I hated them. My stepdad used to complain loudly and constantly that my husband wasn't willing to commute 6+ hours daily just like he did when he was my husband's age. I snarkily pointed out that maybe spending 6 hours a day driving instead of spending it with his family might have contributed to the collapse of his first marriage. My stepdad's usually great, but he just doesn't get some stuff. Young people today are snowflakes. Really? Your generation tried to get CDs banned because people said naughty words on them. My parents like to go on about how technology and lazy parenting is the excuse, yes, excuse for why mental health issues are rising. You know, not because it's becoming less taboo to talk about it or anything. Their generation is the one doing the parenting, though. Back in my day we didn't have the internet. Dad IDK if you've noticed, but we still don't have internet 90% of the time. It astounds me that in today's day and age of technology where we can send emails to the space station and cruise ships in the middle of the ocean have Wi-Fi, that rural internet is still not even close to reliable. When I got into my 20s my parents pestered me day and night about getting married to not get older alone and because they deserved a grandson. I was a jobless med student. How the heck do they thought I could start a family without a solid financial planning, let alone raise a child? My dad used to complain about how we relied too heavily on him to get us to school and that he had to catch public transport, which we often did anyway, and just generally about how we were spoilt in many ways and have expected many things done for us rather than doing them ourselves. Then one day when I was in first year uni we were going through old photos for my grandma's funeral and there was one of my dad at about age 10 in his school uniform with his siblings and an older man I didn't recognize all standing in front of a car at their childhood home. When I asked my aunt who the man was she said, "Oh, that was the family's chauffeur. He was probably taking us to school." Now, well, we don't all have chauffeurs is my favorite response when my dad asks me to do something. Back in my day you could smack your kids and discipline them. Nowadays kids are running amok because parents don't kick them up the ass. Really? Is that why both of you are complete emotional frick-ups who have extreme anger issues? Also something my dad says so often. Young people at work just expect to be the CEO straight away. What? Back in my day we weren't depressed. We went out and made friends. It's those computers and phones that are making you antisocial. Back on your day, you guys literally went out every night, got blackout drunk, went joyriding in stolen cars and started fights with everyone. Sounds like you were looking for an outlet for your emotional pain. Back in my day we worked for what we wanted. If you want to buy a house, you need to work. Dude, it's proven that our money doesn't go as far as yours. Back in my day we had it harder because our interest rates were 17%. 17% on a $20k mortgage ain't much, mate. Mom was married at 19 and owned my own home by the same age and had you at 21. You're 25 and still living at home. Why can't you be more like me? You have no drive. When we were kids my parents always said I'll give you something to cry about and we always thought they were going to hit us. Instead, they crashed the housing market. Back in my days I had to take care of my brothers, clean, cook, do the laundry, clean the backyard, study, and I got good grades. Okay mom, sorry that I had a 90 in my grades, but I also had to handle the after school stuff that you forced me in, like the orchestra, sorry. How cars were safer, and how today's cars get totally trashed in wrecks. They're called crumple zones, and they save lives. How they only made $X dollars when they started out, which equates to dang near my mid-career salary after you factor in inflation. How beating your kids was good for them. Literally I've heard I was spanked with love. How talking about racist and bigoted crap was just good conversation. My father-in-law is coming to town this weekend. I'm sure I'll have more of these come Monday. Parent, I want my kids to have a better life and not have to struggle like I did. Kid has their own opinion and personality. Parent, back in my day, I would have been beaten for that. You deserve to be beaten. Go back to being property so that I can dream about what an amazing creator I am. I love violence. Not my mom, but my grandmother. One day we were talking about crazy stuff going on with politics, racism, equal rights, etc. And she suddenly says, I don't get all this racial stuff. Back in my day, the blacks had it great. They had their own bathrooms and water fountains. We built them apartments so they had a place to live and they just wrecked everything. Talk about living in a bubble. Luckily we were talking on the phone so she couldn't see the incredulous look on my face. I was speechless for a bit, then quickly changed the topic. Dating. In high school, if I went on one date with a guy, we were already considered boyfriend and girlfriend. Back in my day, I went on several dates with guys a week, and we weren't considered going steady yet. Well, I would have been considered a S if I did that in high school. Mom. Back in my day we had a black and white television with one channel. I low-key think that claim is fake. So we had to go outside and do things for fun instead of sitting in front of the TV all day. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.